in private practice, or when you're building your own consulting business or your own coaching business, neutrality creates confusion. It does. Neutrality creates confusion because your patient or your client didn't come to you for options. They didn't. They didn't come to you for options. They came to you for professional guidance. If your consults keep ending with, I need to think about it. Like, can I think about it? This isn't a pricing problem. And it's likely not even a confidence problem. For some of you, maybe. But, and you're not bad at sales. You're having the wrong conversation. That's really the key. You are having the wrong conversation. So most nurses, nurse practitioners, clinicians in general, they turn enrollment conversations or consults into mini master classes, right? So they teach, they explain, they prove, but the consult isn't for education. It's for a decision. It is for a decision. And when you start treating it like one, everything changes. Everything changes, including how you actually feel in the room and how they feel in the room. So let's get into it. You're not bad at sales. You're having the wrong conversation. As I mentioned, nurses, nurse practitioners, doctors, even I've seen it across the board. They struggle with sales not because they lack the right scripts or the confidence, right? They struggle because they are unknowingly trying to educate. They're trying to fix. They're trying to prove their value. They're moving into, like, how just trying to really show how much they know and how much they can help this person, and it starts to go into that convincing energy. And all of us have felt that convincing energy. It is not a good feeling, and that's not where you want to go. So that's what happens. That's what tends to happen during a conversation that actually has a completely different purpose. Here's the thing: you've probably been thinking that a consult or an enrollment conversation is for explaining your program, explaining everything that you found in their blood work, if you're doing a root cause blood work analysis, and then explaining your program. But that's not it. The consult is actually for making a decision with your patient or client. Okay, that's what it is. Once you understand that, anxiety drops immediately, and you'll see your enrollments, or I say anxiety, but that uncomfortability. That feeling that you get in your stomach when you're about to mention how you can work with them or how they can work with you, and you're about to mention the price, and you're about to, you're right there. That's when you start to feel sometimes weird or uncomfortable or anxious, or you get that pit in your stomach, or sometimes you just shift the conversation. You dodge it all together. You don't even offer. You don't even offer the opportunity to work with you because you're kind of scared, right? But so we've all been there. I've experienced it. You've experienced it. We've been there. We're on the same page here. But what happens is when you really understand what the real purpose of your enrollment conversation or your consult is, literally you'll start to see your enrollment numbers increase exponentially, not just by a little bit, exponentially. Okay, so most nurses, nurse practitioners, right, they don't actually hate sales. Not really. They hate what they think sales requires them to be. Did you hear that? Did you hear that? They think they hate what they think sales requires them to be. And I've seen it. And I've even felt it. Early on in my business, I felt my energy shift. And it's kind of like, and I've seen this because oftentimes I'll watch back or I'll listen back to my clients, my business coaching clients, their consults, right? Of course, we have to make sure they get, consent and all that, and all it's HIPAA compliant, right? So I'm not hearing any of their personal information, but I'm listening to the flow of the conversation of the consult, and I can hear it in their tone shifts, their body language shifts, their confidence. I mean, I can even feel their confidence shift, even when I'm listening to an audio replay of the consult, right? And so it's because you think you have to shift out of this, I don't know, out of who you are into a whole different personality. And it's not true. It's simply not true. And in fact, The more you can stay yourself, the better. It does not require you to put on your what those white patent leather shoes and the white slick suit. I don't know why that image always comes up for me when I think about it, like a sales carsman or something, a used car salesman. I don't know that I've ever actually seen a used car salesman with white patent leather shoes and a white suit, maybe on movies, but that's kind of an image that I think we all might have in our head. And the last thing we want to do is be that person. We don't want to be that person, right? So, but we get all weird, right? The moment a consult starts moving towards money, it's as if your brain shifts into, again, one of three roles really: the teacher, the rescuer, or the over explainer, the salesperson. The Again, you get into that convincing mode. Not good. Not good. Any of those is really not where you want to be. Because that in that very moment, that's when the conversation quietly collapses. That's when things just start to unravel all in one. Okay. Not because the patient isn't interested, and certainly not because you can't help the patient or the client. Neither of those things are true, but it's because the clinician, the nurse, and the practitioner left the role of the professional and entered into a role of the persuader or the salesperson. That's not what you want. Nothing wrong with salespeople. Here's it, by the way, nothing wrong with salespeople. That's not what you want. You don't want to take on that identity. You don't want to take on that persona, because for most of us, we have a very, I would say, jaded or even negative connotation or impression of what a salesperson is. So again, the last thing we want to do is take that on. And you don't have to. That's what I really need you to get. That is not the expectation. That is actually not what you want to do at all. So let's talk about why this is actually even happening. So you're holding an education conversation instead of a decision conversation, right? There's a big difference. There's a distinct difference. I don't want you to conflate the two, because they are not the same. Education conversations create interest. Like, that's interesting. That's what creates that. I'll think about it because it's interesting. I'll think about it. And the reality of it is, they're not thinking about it. There have been pieces missed in the enrollment conversation that were critical pieces for them to be able to make a confident decision, whether it's a yes or a no. The I'll think about it is really just there were pieces missing to the equation. Okay. So education conversations create interest, whereas decision conversations create commitment. It is the difference between, again, them saying, "Oh, can I think about it?" versus like, "Oh my God, let me go get my car. How can I work with you? How fast can we get started?" That's what you want to hear more of. And I am not exaggerating at all. That is what you want to. That's what you want to hear more of. Patients don't or clients, patients or clients, they don't say no because they don't understand what you are offering. They don't understand, what the process is. That's not why they say no. And that's not even why they say, let me think about it. They say no, or they say, let me think about it, which kind of is a no. It basically is a no, right? Because no decision was facilitated. No decision making process was facilitated. And because the problem and the gap being, the problem that they have and the solution, or the state, the current state versus their future state, right? And the urgency, probably one of the most important ingredients to this whole conversation. Either one, both, or all of those things have not yet been uncovered. The problem, the gap, or the urgency. That's why you're getting the let me think about it. Or can I get back with you? That's the same thing. That's a no. It's a no. It's a no. Okay. And so when you have those elements in place, then the yes becomes very natural. And you did not have to shift into a whole different persona or a whole different person or identity in order to get those yeses more frequently. Okay. So when a patient or a client leaves your consult, whether they're in person, whether they're on Zoom, however it is that you're doing your consults, when they say that I need to think about it, it doesn't mean that they need more time. They're not really going to think about it. They really aren't. It really means that no one has helped them process the decision in real time. And again, it means that the real problem, and there's a difference. That's a whole nother podcast between what the problem is, like a parent problem versus really the unseen problem. There's a difference there, right? But there, it means that the real problem has not been identified, the gap has not been established, and the urgency also has not been uncovered. Okay. So an enrollment conversation or consult is not about convincing someone to work with you, not at all. So if you have that thought, if that has been what your perception was, or if that's what you've been thinking, and maybe that's why you've been avoiding having these conversations, or whatever the case may be, the an enrollment conversation is not about convincing. That's the last thing you want. Whenever you find yourself moving into convincing, that really like yucky convincing energy, you might as well just get up and leave. Okay, I'm being facetious, but you're on the wrong path. You're on the wrong path when you find yourself in convincing mode. Okay. I will tell you a little pro tip. A great way to stay out of convincing mode is just to ask questions. Ask questions. Okay. But here's the thing. Again, I want to help you flip this thought or reframe the idea that a consult or enrollment conversation is about convincing someone to work with you. Absolutely not. Absolutely not. It's about helping someone decide what they already came to you for in the first place. They already came to you for support in the first place. And let's be clear, if they did not think you could help them, they would not be there. Can we just start there? Well, just can you accept that? Can you receive that? If they really truly did not believe that you could help them, they would not be there, whether it's in person or whether it's virtually. They already know that you can. Okay? Remember, you're not selling your program. You're not selling your program. You are facilitating a clinical decision, and you're facilitating a decision around their transformation, their health transformation. We've got to remember that. That's probably, if you don't take anything else from this, I want you to take that. Okay. You're not selling your program. You are helping facilitate a decision around their health transformation. Okay. I think it's important that we talk about really quickly what's actually happening during that conversation, during that enrollment conversation. Again, whether it's in person or online, and why you might freeze, or at least feel like you're freezing or hedging or shrinking during the conversation. Let's talk about it at a nervous system level. Okay. You're literally, your nervous system locks up because healthcare traditionally, traditional healthcare trained us to present options neutrally, right? And to avoid influencing decisions. Although, if we're being really honest, I know as a former ICU nurse, there have been times where I have influence someone to get a procedure because I really truly felt my clinical judgment was that is in their best interest. I am sure if we had a one-on-one conversation, no matter what setting you were, whether you're a mother baby, whether you were ER, whether you were, it doesn't matter, whether you're ICU, doesn't matter where you worked. I am pretty confident if we were just talking one-on-one, having a real girlfriend to girlfriend conversation, you have influenced someone's decisions, right? And that's not necessarily a bad thing, but traditionally, we've been trained to just kind of give options and be neutral, right? But in private practice, or when you're building your own consulting business or your own coaching business, neutrality creates confusion. It does. Neutrality creates confusion because your patient or your client didn't come to you for options. They didn't. They didn't come to you for options. They came to you for professional guidance. They came to you because they need help getting from where they are now to where they ultimately want to be in their health. And it doesn't matter, again, what your specialty is. It doesn't matter. They have this set of symptoms. It's affecting areas in their life, in their relationships, in their performance, all the things, their work performance, their performance at home, it's affecting the relationship with their kids, their spouse, whatever the case may be, right? And they want resolution. They want support with that. They came to you for professional guidance. And so when you remove your recommendation, then the patient or the client feels uncertainty. They feel uncertainty. They don't feel autonomy. They don't feel confidence. And you guys, another big part of this conversation, this enrollment conversation, is confidence. If you're not confident, if you don't have a level of certainty around you being able to help them, even if you don't say it, I would say it leaks. It's leaking through. It's communicated non-verbally. They sense it. They pick up on it. Okay. So you have to have a certain level of confidence and a level of certainty, even going into this conversation. Because the reality of it is uncertainty delays commitment. Uncertainty on your part, which again is inadvertently transferred and non-verbally transferred to them. Now they're uncertain if you can help them because you're uncertain if you can help them, even though clinically you know, but sometimes something weird happens in the conversation, right? But the bottom line is uncertainty delays commitment, which means they leave with, can I think about it? Or can I get back with you? Or the worst, how do I get back in touch with you? Okay, that's a no. All right. So what can you do practically? What can you do practically? Because I love to give you, okay, like what can we do today? So the practical shift that you can make is this: at the end of your consults or your enrollment conversations, instead of let me know if you want to move forward or however it is that you kind of transition, instead of what you're doing now, and you be all kind of have, I'm sure you know how you actually, what your flow is. Let's not do that. And instead, let's try on this. Let's do this instead, okay? Here it is. Based on what we've discussed, do you think this is something I can help you with? Yeah, that's the question. That's the question. Based on what we've discussed, do you think that this is something I can help you with? Now, I'm going to I'm going to pause right here, because the reality of it is they wouldn't be on the phone with you. They wouldn't be on the Zoom with you. They wouldn't be sitting in your office if they didn't think that this is something that you could help them with. One of our most precious resources, you guys hear me say this all the time, one of our most precious resources is our time. It's even more precious than our money. We can get more money. We can't make more. We can't get more time. We can make more money. We can't make more time, right? So by virtue of them actually carving out an hour or whatever, 30 minutes, whatever the time is to be, they already know that you can help them. Okay. But you want to ask based on what we've discussed. Okay. Let me tee this up for you a little bit more. Let's say, for instance, you have done a root cause blood work analysis. You've gone over the their blood work. You've tied what you're seeing in the blood work to the symptoms that they're presenting with and that they're complaining of, that they're experiencing, right? So you've done that piece of it. Now you have, and even while you're doing, you're kind of going through those lab markers and again tying them to their symptoms. You're now you're transitioning into how you can what they need to do, how you can support them, for lack of a better word, how you can support them. So you've had some conversation already, okay? And by the way, I have a whole framework for that, FYI. Now, what you do is you're going to simply ask, based on what we've discussed, do you think this is something I can help you with? And be quiet. Don't let them answer. And once they say yes, because oftentimes it'll just be a yes or yeah, oh, well, I think so. Or it'll be something in the affirmative 9 times out of 10, right? Then guess what? You ask them another question, and it's a very simple question: why? Or you can say, why is that? So you've asked them based on what we discussed. Do you think this is something I can help you with? They say yes. You say why? Why is that? In a very curious way, not an accusatory way. Like tone is everything, right? But you ask, why is that? And they tell you. And now, instead of you going into convincing mode and trying to sell your program, they are now selling themselves and really selling you on why they should work with you. You see the whole complete shift there? You did not pressure. You didn't have to shift personality. You didn't have to chase. You didn't have to convince. You simply guided and asked questions. That is clinical certainty. Okay. That is clinical certainty. That is ownership. That is confidence. That is not a sales tactic. So as we wrap, as I mentioned, you don't need better scripts right now. Like you can have that little talking point. You want to start implementing that yesterday, what I just gave you, right? That's a total game changer. And I think the biggest part of this is that you really need to stop. I really want you to stop treating the enrollment conversation in the consult like a presentation, right? Like a webinar, like a masterclass. It's a pivotal point where they either get the support that they need or they don't. That's the conversation that we're having, right? And when you shift from explaining to guiding and to asking, you'll notice something very different. You'll notice something very surprising, in fact. And it's that you don't feel pushy anymore. You don't feel uncomfortable anymore. And your patients or your clients, potential patients and potential clients, stop hesitating as much. Because for the first time, someone has actually helped them decide to take the next step to optimal health. Yes. So, if you're ready, if you're ready to stop explaining and over explaining and convincing, and if you're ready to stop getting all those, let me think about it, and if you're ready to start enrolling people into your programs, your transformational programs, I've seen your programs. If you're ready to stop getting what you've been getting and you're ready to start enrolling like a champ, right? Like the clinician that you are, like the brilliant nurse and nurse practitioner that you are, this is exactly the work that we're doing in the Quantum Leap Collective this month. Okay. Because closing or enrolling people is not a personality trait, you guys. It is a learned skill, just like every other skill that you've learned. Okay. That being said, as always, I love you. I appreciate you. I'm so glad that you were here with me today. And keep trusting what's being stirred inside of you. It's leading you somewhere important. I will see you next time. Bye for now. Before you go, make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss what's coming next. This show is for nurses, nurse practitioners, and clinicians who are ready to practice, lead, heal, and live differently. If this podcast resonates with you, a quick review helps the right people find their way here too. And if you want to take this beyond listening, I'd love to personally invite you into the Quantum Leap community, our free Facebook space where this conversation continues and you don't have to figure it out alone. You'll find the link in the show notes below. I'll meet you there.